My name's Jake. I'm 38 years old, and I live in a small neighborhood just outside Roanoke, Virginia. Folks around here know me as the quiet type, the guy who keeps to himself. For the last 15 years, I've poured my soul into building a life that I thought would finally give me some stability, maybe even a little pride. I'm not talking about a white picket fence or a dream house. I'm talking about my custom-built $7,000 gaming PC. I know, it might sound ridiculous to anyone on the outside, but that rig wasn't just my hobby. It was my escape, my passion, and more than anything, it was my lifeline. I streamed part-time, did freelance design work, and built a small community of followers who appreciated what I did. It was my side hustle, and it was keeping me afloat during a rocky couple of years when full-time work was hard to come by. You'd think my parents would have been proud of what I built. Instead, they always acted like it was a phase, a toy. That attitude had been simmering under the surface for years. Ever since high school, my younger sister, Miranda, had been the golden child, the one who got away with everything while I was the dependable one. I used to think maybe it was just a phase of favoritism that would pass when we got older. But no. The first real warning sign came about a year ago when I overheard my mom and dad talking in the kitchen late at night while I was visiting. They didn't know I was standing there, listening. They were talking about selling Jake's computer to help cover some credit card debt. I thought they were joking. I mean, it was mine. I paid for every single part. But it planted this seed of unease in my gut. I shrugged it off back then, thinking no parent would actually do something like that. I should have listened to that gut feeling. It was just a regular Thursday when it happened. I got out to pick up some groceries, nothing special, just the usual stuff. When I came back home and walked through the front door, the first thing I noticed was that the living room felt off. It was too quiet, too empty. My gut clenched before I even set the bags down. I rushed into my bedroom, my heart already pounding. The desk where my PC used to sit was bare. The chair was pushed back like someone had sat there just long enough to take what they wanted and then left. I tore through the house, looking for the rig, for the cables, the monitor, anything, but it was all gone. My parents were sitting in the kitchen, sipping coffee like nothing had happened. My mom looked up and casually mentioned, "Oh, we sold that computer. Miranda needed some money for her shopping." "You didn't need it, right? It's just a toy." I felt the floor drop out from under me. 7 grand. Years of saving, building, upgrading, all gone in an instant. Just a toy? That toy wasn't just a PC. It was my income, my escape, my pride. My head spun, and for a moment, I actually thought I was going to pass out right there in the kitchen. But here's the twist. They didn't just sell it on a whim. They'd been planning it. I found out later that Miranda had maxed out her credit cards on some urgent purchases, and instead of asking me or dealing with it like adults, they decided to sacrifice my PC. They figured I'd understand. That I'd roll over like I always had. Not this time. I couldn't even see straight. I was shaking so bad. But instead of blowing up right then and there, because believe me, I was close, I took a deep breath and stepped back. If I lost my cool, they'd just write me off as being dramatic, unstable. I knew their game. I grabbed my phone and started digging through emails, receipts, screenshots, anything that proved ownership of that PC. And I had everything. Serial numbers, purchase orders, even the custom configurations I'd requested when I built it. All of it was under my name, bought with my money. I printed it all out, stapled it into a packet, and handed it to my parents. I didn't say a word. My dad just looked at the papers, then back at me like I was making a big deal over nothing. My mom sighed, muttered something about how Miranda was going through a tough time, and they both expected me to let it go. But this wasn't something I could just forgive. Here's the second twist. When I pressed harder, I found out they hadn't even gotten fair market value for the PC. They sold it for pennies on the dollar to one of Miranda's friends. It wasn't even about the money for them. It was about helping their golden child at my expense. That realization made everything snap into focus. Once the proof was in their hands, I let the silence stretch. I could feel the weight of it pressing against them, but they kept sitting there, pretending like I was being unreasonable. That was when I realized no amount of evidence would change how they saw me. But I wasn't done. I gave them a simple choice. Either refund me the full amount of the PC, or I would go to the police and file a theft report. I had enough proof to make a solid case, and they knew it. My dad tried to bluster, saying that filing a report would just embarrass the family. My mom gave me those sad, disappointed eyes like I was the one breaking her heart. That's when the twist came. I wasn't bluffing. I had already spoken to a lawyer friend earlier that day, and he told me exactly what steps to take. I pulled out my phone, showed them the drafted report, and let them read every word. I wasn't going to be bullied this time. They crumbled faster than I expected. My dad muttered that they'd find a way to make it right. My mom tried to justify it again, saying they thought I wouldn't mind. I didn't answer. I just packed my things, made it clear I wasn't staying in that house another night, and walked out. Here's the third twist. While they agreed to refund me the money, I later found out they didn't have the cash. They had to borrow from other family members, and those family members weren't too happy to find out what really happened. I thought getting the money back would make me feel better. It didn't. When the dust settled, I sat alone in my tiny apartment, staring at the walls and wondering how it had come to this. I should have been relieved that I'd stood up for myself, that I'd proven I wasn't just the family's doormat. But instead, I just felt empty. That night, Miranda texted me. She said she was so sorry for how things had turned out, but then she added a line that made my stomach twist. It's not like you really needed it. You're always so independent. That was it. That was the moment I realized they hadn't learned a thing. They didn't see me as an equal, or as a son, or as a brother. I was just a backup plan, a wallet, a safety net, a tool to be used when convenient. And here's the fourth twist. A week later, my parents called to ask for help with the mortgage. Again, after everything. I sat there in my apartment that night, rereading Miranda's text like it might magically change into something less condescending. It didn't. It just sat there, staring at me from the screen like a slap I was supposed to pretend didn't hurt. The thing is, I wasn't surprised. Not really. After everything that had happened, the years of being overlooked, the late-night realization that my parents saw my hard work as disposable, the betrayal of selling my PC without even asking me, I shouldn't have been shocked that they'd come back around like nothing had changed. But the audacity of it hit me harder than I expected. The next morning, my dad left a voicemail. He said he hoped I'd had time to think and was ready to talk things over. His voice was calm, casual, like we'd had a small disagreement about what to order for dinner instead of them stealing my livelihood. He even added, "It's not too late to come home and make things right." I sat there listening, my hands trembling. Come home and make things right. As if it was my job to smooth things over, to fix what they had broken. The same way I'd always been the one to fix the leaky faucet, to bail them out with bills, to keep everything running because they couldn't or wouldn't do it themselves. That was the moment when I knew I couldn't go back. I called my lawyer friend again, not to ask for more advice, but to let him know I was ready to move forward with everything we discussed. I wasn't just going to collect my refund and move on. I was going to formally cut ties. I drafted a letter making it clear that I was done financially supporting them. I wasn't rude or cruel. I didn't threaten or accuse. I just stated the facts. I was no longer willing to provide financial assistance. I was removing myself from their lives. When I sent the letter, I felt an unexpected calm wash over me. For the first time in years, I wasn't waiting for the next emergency call, the next guilt trip text, the next frantic "Jake, we need you" plea. I was done. The twist? The very next day, I got a text from an unknown number. It was Miranda's friend, the one who'd bought my PC. She said she'd heard everything and felt awful. She didn't know it was mine. She offered to sell it back to me at the same price she paid, no questions asked. I was floored. I met her at a cafe downtown. She handed me the PC, and for a moment, I just stared at it like it was a long-lost pet that had finally come home. I handed her the cash without a word and carried the machine back to my apartment, feeling like I was reclaiming a piece of myself. But the damage was already done. The PC was a symbol of my independence, yes, but also of the years I'd spent trying to be a good son, the dependable brother, the financial crutch. It was clear now that my parents hadn't just failed me. They'd never really seen me at all. That night, as I reconnected the cables and fired up my system for the first time in weeks, I sat back in my chair and watched the familiar glow of the screen. It was more than just a machine. It was proof that I could stand on my own, that I didn't need them to define who I was. And here's the kicker, the real twist. A week after I got my PC back, I found an email from my mom in my inbox. The subject line read, "Can we start over?" The email sat in my inbox for days before I worked up the nerve to open it. I told myself it was probably another guilt trip, another attempt to manipulate me into returning to the role I'd filled for so long. But part of me, that stubborn little thread of hope I hadn't been able to cut loose yet, wanted to believe it was different. I clicked on it. The email wasn't long. It was a few paragraphs, written in my mom's usual soft tone. She said they regretted how everything had turned out. She said they missed me, that they felt they'd let me down, and that they wanted to start over. The words were carefully chosen, just vague enough to leave me guessing about what she really meant. But then came a twist I didn't see coming. She mentioned that Miranda was pregnant. She said that Miranda was going through a hard time, and that my parents were feeling overwhelmed. They thought it would be good for the family if I came home, if we put everything behind us. She said it would be selfish to hold a grudge, especially with a baby on the way. I stared at the screen, my stomach churning. There it was, wrapped in the softest language, the same old guilt, the same old expectations. My mother hadn't written because she missed me. She'd written because they needed me again. Because Miranda had gotten herself into another mess, and they expected me to fix it. No anger, no sadness, just a cold clarity that settled in my chest. For the first time, I saw the truth for what it was. I didn't reply to the email right away. I let it sit there, burning a hole in my inbox like a forgotten bill. Every time I glanced at it, I felt the same wave of cold indifference. They hadn't changed. They weren't sorry. They were just desperate. After 3 days, I finally typed out a reply. I kept it short, direct, but polite, something I'd learned from years of keeping the peace, even when I was seething inside. I wrote that I appreciated their concern, that I wished them all the best with Miranda's pregnancy, but that I wouldn't be coming home. I said I needed to focus on building my own life now, and that I hoped they'd respect my decision. I stared at the screen before hitting send, wondering if they'd read it as the final goodbye it really was. A day later, my phone buzzed with a text from my dad. "Jake, don't do this. Think about the family. Think about Miranda." No apology, no acknowledgement of what they'd done, just more guilt, more pressure. But here's the twist. By then, I was done feeling guilty. I didn't reply. Instead, I spent the next few days packing up the rest of my things. I found a better apartment, closer to the city where my freelance work was picking up. I set up my PC again, this time with a renewed sense of purpose. I wasn't just rebuilding a gaming setup. I was reclaiming my life. The real kicker? About a week later, Miranda herself reached out. She called, her voice dripping with forced sweetness, telling me how much she missed me, how sorry she was, how she wished we could just put it all behind us. She said she'd understand if I needed time, but she really hoped I'd be there for the baby. I almost laughed. I told her I'd think about it, but we both knew the truth. There was nothing left to think about. I didn't think about it. Not really. The truth was, the decision had already been made long before Miranda's call. Long before the email from my mom. It had been brewing for years, decades even, each disappointment layering over the last like old wallpaper in a house no one cared enough to renovate. I wasn't going back. I spent that week working late into the night, pouring everything I had into my freelance projects, reaching out to new clients, even streaming a little. The hum of the PC in the background was a comfort, a reminder of what I'd reclaimed. It was quiet, but it was mine. Then, one evening, I got a knock on the door. Not a text, not a call. A physical knock. I opened it, and there was my dad, standing awkwardly on the porch, looking smaller than I'd ever seen him. He held a grocery bag, some homemade food, I guess, and for a second I thought he might apologize. But he didn't. Instead, he cleared his throat and said, "Your mother's worried sick. Miranda's going through a lot. It's not fair to punish the whole family." I stood there, staring at him, feeling the weight of those words. Punish the whole family. As if I had done something to them. As if standing up for myself, for my property, my independence, was an act of cruelty. Here's the twist. I didn't argue. I didn't defend myself. I just nodded slowly and said, "I'm sorry you feel that way." His face fell. He didn't expect that. He didn't expect me to stand there, calm and unmoving, without anger or guilt. He left a few minutes later, leaving the bag on the step like a peace offering I hadn't asked for. That night, I didn't eat the food. I tossed it into the trash. And for the first time in years, I slept soundly. After that night, the calls slowed to a trickle, then stopped altogether. The silence was heavy, but it was a silence I had chosen. It was strange at first, like stepping into an empty house that still echoed with old arguments and unfinished apologies. But the quiet was mine. I focused on my work. My freelance gigs started picking up momentum, and the streaming community rallied behind me in ways I hadn't expected. I even got a couple of offers for collaborations, small ones but genuine. For the first time in years, I felt like I wasn't just treading water, I was moving forward. Then, about a month later, I got an unexpected package in the mail. No return address, just my name scrawled in familiar handwriting. I opened it carefully and found a single photograph inside. Me, Miranda, and my parents at my high school graduation. I remembered the day. I remembered the forced smiles, the way I'd felt like an afterthought, even then. Tucked behind the photo was a note, written in my mom's hand. "All families fight. We're still your family." I read it 3 times, feeling nothing. No anger, no sadness, just understanding. They'd never see me as more than what I'd always been to them: a convenience, a resource, a support system. Even now, their gesture wasn't about real reconciliation. It was a token, a breadcrumb, hoping I'd come back. Here's the final twist: I didn't reply. I didn't text, call, or even acknowledge it. I carefully placed the photo and the note back in the envelope, sealed it, and filed it away in a drawer. Not as a keepsake, but as a reminder of how far I'd come and how far I was willing to go to protect my peace. It's been months since that last contact. I still live in my apartment near the city, still working, still streaming, still pushing forward. The old guilt that used to gnaw at me whenever I thought of my family, it's gone. I've built something for myself. Not just the gaming rig, though that sits proudly on my desk now, humming softly as a quiet symbol of everything I reclaimed. I built a life where I don't need to ask for permission or approval. A life where I'm not the safety net for people who never once thought to catch me. Do I miss them? Sometimes. But it's not the kind of missing that makes me want to go back. It's more like missing the idea of what family could have been. And here's the final twist. Last week, I was invited to speak at a local gaming and tech conference. Small, sure, but it's a step. I told my story, how I built my setup from scratch, how I fought to reclaim what was mine. I didn't talk about the betrayal or the guilt or the heartbreak. I just told them how sometimes standing up for yourself is the only way forward. After my talk, a young guy, barely out of college, came up to me, eyes wide. He said my story gave him hope. Said he'd been stuck in a family dynamic where he was the dependable one, too, always giving, never appreciated. He thanked me for showing him that it's possible to break free. That was when I realized something. This wasn't just about a computer. It was about reclaiming my worth. So yeah, my name's Jake, and if you'd asked me a year ago, I would have said family means everything. But today I know that sometimes family isn't who you're born to. It's who you choose to stand beside you, to lift you up, to see you for who you really are. And for the first time in a long time, I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be.